and of Delightful Dissent. Today, I'm with Chris Kenworthy, a coach with a taste for adventure. So, welcome to the show, Chris.
Hello.
And today, we're going to be talking about the idea of wasting time. And this is a pretty live one for me. I've spent a lot of my life feeling like I was either wasting time or missing out on doing something fun. Sometimes both at once. Somehow, tells you a lot about my history. But yeah, it's a really one I'm really looking forward to getting into. If you happen to be new to the show, Delightful Dissent is an idea that came about through my work with people taking really different pioneering approaches to complex problems and looking at things differently. And Chris is very much one of these people. And what I found was that people often hit these kind of weird hidden barriers that are around implicit assumptions and the deeper beliefs that just everyone kind of thinks are true, but never really thinks about. And this show is about challenging those and exploring the limits of those and finding out where they're not true anymore. So I hope this show gives you some specific ideas about things you can do in your personal and professional life that you can do differently and approach differently. But perhaps more importantly, I also hope it gives you some ideas about how you can go out there and challenge some assumptions of your own, because I'd like everyone to be able to do this and this to be a normal part of everything that we do. And the show's called Delightful Dissent because, yeah, we are challenging things. We are saying, oh, actually, no, we're not sure about this. This might be wrong. But it's not about proving ourselves right at the expense of everyone else. And it's not about being incredibly serious about it either. It's about having some fun and really exploring what it means to think about things in a slightly different way. And the show is genuinely live. We might talk about challenging things and difficult personal topics. So please do be aware if that might be an issue for you. And we also might use strong language. So if that's a concern, please do be warned that that's also a possibility. And it is live, so if there are any technical problems or anything, or any pets in the background, please do bear with us. But hopefully not. There aren't any perfect answers here. This really is about asking questions, and it's about asking questions for yourself and how you feel about what we're talking about, and asking questions of each other and of us. If you're watching live, you can comment, and we will endeavour to answer anything that you mention. If you happen to be listening to or watching the recording, we will share details about how you can get in touch with both of us and continue that conversation at the end of the show. So yeah, I first met Chris, I think it was a few months ago now online, a little while ago now. And we kind of chatted a fair bit. I was really struck by kind of, first of all, his kind of playful, funny, but also quite directed and quite practical combination, which isn't something that I necessarily associate as going together very often. So I really wanted to kind of get him on the show. So yeah, Chris, though, could I ask you to kind of introduce yourself a little bit, the kind of work that you do and who you work with, please?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say how masterful that introduction was. It's so seamless and smooth. I really enjoyed just sitting there and enjoying that. Yeah.
Well, it's the 48th time I've done it, so it shows.
I didn't realise. Yeah, 48. Well done. You've done it once or twice before. Who am I? I'm Chris. Hello. I'm a life coach, trained life coach. I work with people who are, they have a tendency to maybe have a lot of ideas that don't necessarily come to fruition. They don't do anything with them, or they've got grand plans for an adventure, but they're not quite doing it. They tend to second guess themselves, maybe, perhaps overthink things. They tend to be people going through some sort of life transition, 30, 40, 50 years of age, or a career change, or their business is kind of, okay, but they just want, there's something missing. They feel something's not right. So I work with them to help figure out what that is.
Cool. So how did you actually come to doing this kind of work? What's your journey to finding yourself doing this?
There's a story. Well, I was self-employed for a long time as a freelancer, copywriter in marketing, and it just lost its kind of appeal. And then I decided to renovate our basement underground and literally went into a dark hole for about 3 years and just ran away from the problem, really. Well, I didn't run away; it was confront me every day, as they often do these things. And just stepped off a little bit, and I was lucky enough to hang around with a few people who were coaches, and I found this model, this way of a profession. And the more I dug into it, the more resistance I found to it, like being skeptical of what it was, and that's normally a good signal, isn't it? That it means something's interesting. Yeah, I just found that I found this vehicle that was just really, that connected so many dots for me, just not having to be the expert, helping other people, nurturing. That was the thing. The big word that came was nurturing, was helping other people be their best, to help them be enough. So that was the vehicle. And then I just, the more I dived into it and got trained, the more I was like, this really fits. It really helps take my career in other places, getting more people, more contact with people, instead of just this kind of transactional relationship with clients. Do the work, email it, it's done, that was it. Now there's like that, I've got that face-to-face human nurturing thing that was massively missing. So it gives me that. And it's just proved to be a vehicle for, not just enriching other people's lives, but myself as well. I'm finding all these threads that keep coming up in coaching, like intuition and being our relationship with uncertainty, and that led to improv. And I found these threads and body work and physical stuff that links all my interest with the outdoors and exercise. And it's like, wow, this can be not just my occupation, but my hobby, my love, my passion, my interest, the way to meet people. It's just a really, I'm really lucky. I found a really holistic vehicle that just, it's just wonderful. I love it.
That's great. Well, I mean, well done, and well done for taking it is a step into, into unknown and into uncertainty, particularly when we have, if you have a whole load of different, apparently disconnected interests, actually drawing them together and finding a way of satisfying all of them is very valuable, but it's not straightforward.
It isn't, and it's kind of gratifying secretly, I guess, that these things have value, these experiences that we went through, not just good stuff I'm good at. It's actually the stuff I'm bad at that really helps with my work. So yeah, it's beautiful.
No, that's brilliant. So before we get into the assumption itself, have you got a quote that you'd like to share around the idea?
Do I need to state where it's from? Because I think
you can share before or after, whichever you prefer.
Okay, all right then, I shall. Here we go. The hippo hands me a card with job details, and I read with disbelief. I breathe one final prayer of mercy, and I recall Nancy's words in Oliver Twist. I shall put the mark on some of you that will bring me to the gallows before me time. There is now no escape but death. There you go. So that's an excerpt from Morrissey's fabulous autobiography on Penguin Classics, which is just cover to cover, just hilarious, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
what do you make of that?
I really like that. I mean, I think that idea of like, there's so much fixity and certainty in that. I really do. It's such a funny thing to have, that level of knowing, almost. I think for me, is like that clearly is. I'm not doubting the experience. It's just for me, it's like I just don't resonate with it at all. I think the other thing with Morrissey is that is he's one of those people who I find a reliable indicator of things that are different to me. Some people are consistent in terms of like recommendation, and some people are consistent in terms of anti-recommendation. And they can be just as useful. Like it's like a film critic who, if you're like, what if I know they hate this film, I'm going to really like it, and vice versa. So he kind of falls into that category for me.
Yeah, he's a barometer, isn't he? It's much the same reasons. Yeah, Morrissey was he's a solo artist now, but he's the former lead singer of the Smiths, a indie band from Manchester, and he's just renowned for his, shall we say, romantic tendencies, perhaps, is his frame. But yeah, he's very much a barometer, and what he represents is somewhat of an extremity of human nature, well, at least my human nature experience. So yeah, he's very much a barometer. If Morrissey's gone too far, then yeah.
So how do you feel? I mean, how does it relate to this idea of wasting time for you and this? Yeah.
Well, it's the context is he's in a job centre trying to get a job. So there's that. There's the obvious urgency of finding employment, that you need a job. You have to have something to occupy your times with. But I think it's the idea of death breathing down your neck, but that's an simplification, obviously. But it's his melodrama of his reaction to the challenge that we're all faced with, which is, yeah, we have a finite amount of time to do stuff, and it's, yeah, the barometer is, yeah, his melodrama. It I have that panic within me. I feel his experience as a melodrama. Let's put it this way: here's a guy who's believed his own story, that emotional story, the narrative that we construct of ourselves, of our experience. And if we believe emotions rather than using them as signals, we end up here with a chunky, well, bestseller autobiography. But I guess that's probably why it jumped out at me. It was just something about the context and his reaction to the challenge of existence, the futility of it, I guess. But there's more in there. I'm not sure why. I was just immediately drawn to it. Like, what do I pick up? And it jumped off the shelf, and I couldn't work out why. So maybe it'll emerge why it is particularly relevant.
Yeah, there's something really interesting for me around that in this idea of kind of gainful employment. Is this, there's something really moral about having work, about doing something. Really, and it's kind of, having interacted with the DWP myself on a few occasions, that sense of, that anything other than like having a clearly describable, clearly valued by other people, and remunerated profession, like task, is somehow both a personal and moral failing.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there's another, the whole story also extends that he's given a sequence of options of jobs he can do, and one of them is cleaning canal banks. And she doesn't want to give him the job, it's just what she happens to have available, and he doesn't want the job she's offering. But it's ridiculous. Like, why is cleaning a canal bank any less or more worthwhile as in the way to spend our time? Why is it any more wasteful or less valuable than the other jobs he's offered, like accountant or civil servant? Like they're all equal. None of them are technically wastes of time. They're things that need doing, perhaps. I don't know.
I think it's a really interesting one. Yeah, that idea of, like, for me, a lot of this relates to busyness as a concept, and this idea that being busy is important and makes us important, and that's shot through the culture deep. It's like, that's why, like, billionaires talk about how much they work, like 120-hour weeks, because it's an excuse for earning such an obscene amount of money.
Yeah.
Busyness excuses the kind of that level of pay on some level. And so we value being busy instead of valuing outcomes, instead of valuing why we are busy, which is a slightly weird kind of thing. And I think a lot of the stuff around, like, we must get people into jobs. It's like, as long as those jobs are actually valuable, it'd be better for everyone if we just gave them the money. If they weren't valuable jobs, we'd use less resources. They'd have more time to do other things, like value to find valuable things. So I think this idea of just, needing to do something, is a big drive.
Yeah. I was just like telling you, that's put me in mind of the thing you opened with. You mentioned your experience of waiting time and what it meant for you. And I remember thinking, oh, that's not my experience of wasting time. Like I would say that I've always been occupied, like not necessarily busy, but occupied with things to do. But as I've turned middle age, I've realized that when it comes to outcomes, I don't necessarily have more outcomes to show for all that being occupied all the time. So it's like this idea, I could have wasted more time and probably ended up roughly about where I am anyway. So that's been a big kind of, I don't need to be productive all the time.
Yeah, I think that idea of productive is an interesting one, and it's like, is the
Yeah.
output? It's all very well generating output, but is the output you want? Is it output anyone
There we go.
wants?
Yeah. Yeah. Like useful output. Yeah, that's the whole thing, isn't it? It's like, what is a useful output? What is, yeah, productive? It's hard. I'm really struggling at the minute to define what productive is, because I have much less time available these days because of various commitments, and I'm finding that what is it I want to do with the time I have available, and what would define productive? Is it I've got things done off the list, which is traditionally what I would have gone for, and that kind of gives you a little dopamine hit, which is your billionaires and your Gary Vaynerchuk and your heavy coaches who are into productivity, or is productivity just that feeling that I've gone sufficiently deep on something or engaged with something that's meaningful, even though it didn't create many things that I can demonstrably show for it. I don't know what I'm struggling to redefine productivity.
Yeah, that idea of something to show for it is a big one, I think.
Mm,
I know it
mm,
also for me. I think, when we were talking and planning this conversation, we touched on this idea of what you could, like the opportunity cost, what you could have done instead, and
yeah,
how much there's this kind of sense of like someone looking over your shoulder, going, "Hey, why were you spending all your time doing that? You should have been doing this instead." And that there
yeah.
being some kind of like internalized getting into trouble thing around not doing something obviously productive.
Interesting. Is that your experience? And do you feel that there is something over your shoulder, like there is a voice? Because I would identify with that as well. Is that your?
I think it's, yeah, definitely this idea of like, for me, I'm kind of constantly almost like keeping an eye on myself to make
Mm.
sure I'm doing something, doing what I should be doing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've that same feeling. I wonder where it comes from. I guess it's just like everything, isn't it? We absorb voices from the past, maybe, or something. But yeah, I wonder what. Yeah, monitoring self, really scrutinizing yourself. That's often yeah, where the judgment comes in about it being wasteful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this idea, it is that I'm going to be told off for wasting time, essentially.
Mm, yeah, yeah. There's something in there as well about. I mean, I have this argument. Well, I've had it more than once or twice with my wife about she'll happily just burn hours, just doing what for her is productive, but for me is like could we do more? And it's just like yeah, that there's it's really tricky. Just like I feel that there's something about that. I don't know. This is a hard coded. You're talking about dissent against received wisdom and stuff. So there's a received wisdom, probably not just in but out there about that one has to live up to the potential or the gifts and attributes, talents that you've been gifted with. And if you don't in some way make the most of your opportunities and your talent and your circumstances, because we are privileged, that in some way that's a waste. And we've bumped heads about that, about where that expectation comes from and whether you're living up to other people and this kind of thing. But there's something in that for me about unfulfilled potential that still lingers.
Mm. Yeah, I know very much what you mean about that, and I have, this is particularly difficult if for me. So I have the situation where I read as more privileged than I actually am, because I read, because the external, because neurodiversity, you can't
Mm,
see the fact that I have that difficulty.
mm,
Um, but so I read as being in a very privileged situation, but I
mm,
actually have quite a big barrier to some of it that is massively over. So that idea of kind of, I grew up with only he would apply himself. That I don't think I had a
really?
single school report that didn't say that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking this. Yeah, I could sum up. Yeah, it's 20 years of education for it's the same thing. Would do well if he keeps his mouth shut and stops disturbing other people, or sits still. Or
Yep,
just fidget all the
yep,
time. That
yep,
that was okay.
yep.
Right, you've just connected a dot there. That's nice to know. Okay, that's where it comes
Yeah,
from.
I mean, I process everything. verbally, I can't actually, if I can't, or externally, if I can't move or talk about something, I actually can't engage with it. For
Okay.
me, like that idea of it's like people. I got as a child, I was often told to sit still and think, and I do quite regularly say if I could go back now, I'd love to be able to go back and say you're going to have to pick one of those. Can't do both.
I can't think of anything worse though than sitting still and thinking. It never ends well with me. That at least just if I'm told what to think about, that ain't going to work. And if the thinking isn't focused on something, it will end up somewhere unhelpful. So yeah, sitting still and thinking that just not going to work for some of us.
And I think it does really come back to this idea of what is a helpful way to approach this. Whatever it is, because wasting time is, there is value in using the resources that we have well.
Sure.
This isn't, but I think the question becomes, for me, it's often a question of like, actually, are we too obsessed with this and we're losing balance either between this and other resources, or between like the current situation right now and the globe, like the bigger picture. And both of those can fall very out. And this idea of wasting time a lot of the time is, it's like it often falls into that category. And also this idea of just doing something for the sake of having something to do, which is such a, when things are limited, it's such a weird thing to do.
I love that. I like that. So it's kind of like we've lost this myopic focus on time and wasting of time, and time being the singular precious resource. We've lost perspective on all the other things that are precious resources worthwhile. Is that what we're saying?
I think so, and also the capacity of those things to generate more of those things, particularly with time, is like you can hit diminishing returns is a real thing. And very often for me, and I've often worked in organizations that ended up in this situation, is often end up finding this as a barrier, is this idea of devoting any resources when things are going okay to doing something different, which is absolutely the time you want to be because you've got spare resources, but that doesn't tend to be the reaction. And so this idea of like, it's a bit like famously Google had the 20% time, and that is wasted time. It's undirected time. People just do whatever and yet that generated a huge amount of value for the organization and was really, really, really good. So really helpful for them, and actually set up, like Gmail exists because of that. So many other Google products exist because of that. So that idea, is like, well, it was wasted in a sense. It wasn't directed. We didn't know what it was going to get us beforehand. And I think this is one of the big fears, is this exploratory stuff, which is where we find the new stuff, is where we find the unexpected and the new ways of approaching things. That feels like a big part of it too.
Yeah, that I can see. Yeah, like it's just like a blank check, really, isn't it? If you're just going to step into this space of exploratory thinking and unstructured time, I want to call it. This idea that, which is not an unusual phrase, but that's the kind of, I think in binaries a lot of the time. This is a bit my undoing, but it's this idea that some time is structured and is productive, or however is organized and is intentional, but let's be honest, the start's clear and the finish is clear, and what you've got to do in between is clear. But you've got this other unstructured time, which is like and it's not that simple, but that's the thought trap, maybe.
Yeah, and I really be interested to dig into that kind of that response, because we've talked about uncertainty and improv a bit, and they imply that. There's nothing in that. That is exactly what they're a practice of. So that's a really, so you know, where does the resistance come to for you, do you think? What's actually coming out, you know?
The resistance to the R bit was it's just the not knowing what would come of it. I think was the first. I think I'm finding the more improv I do, the more I'm finding the layers peel back. At the start, it was very basic judgment of the people who can do this, the unstructured play. They can just throw themselves at abandon with no filters, and they're unbridled and they're fully expressed. And it was like, and then we got past that, and then we got into other layers of judgment about, you know, how to do it right. And it was, again, I'm looking for structure. What's the right way to have unstructured time? You know, it's a joke. So that's where that came from. And then, yeah, does that give you enough insight? Did you want to go deeper into the
No, I think it's a really interesting one. Yeah, I was asking partly because it comes up for me. I definitely have I've always, one of the things I was exploring was like, so there's an idea of having risk appetite, right? And people have, for a long time, I've always been told kind of that I have risk appetite. I've never identified with that at all. Because I don't actually enjoy risk in the literal sense. I don't enjoy gambling, because I just don't enjoy. I don't enjoy roller coasters. I don't enjoy anything where it's really where the odds are quantified.
Okay.
I enjoy things where they're not, where there isn't an outcome. But I think, first of all, people lump the two together. So for me, I have a really high uncertainty appetite. I really enjoy uncertainty, and quite a low risk appetite in the sense of a known risk, which is slightly odd, but seems to definitely works for how I experience the world. And then I realized that, first of all, uncertainty is such a terrifying thing for some people that's why they don't even consider it in this picture. And second of all, that a lot of them have kind of, you know, you kind of pick up other people's fear. Is my joy of exploring and going off on a random tangent has led to really strong negative reactions from people in the past. And so I just I kind of internalized, carry a resistance still to doing that. And I think a part of it is this wasting time, or this almost getting lost in time, and going down a rabbit hole you can't kind of come back from.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, I'm kind of thinking about the school reports, what you're saying about your school report again. It's like daydreaming, you know. Daydream's a bad thing, you know. Wake up, back to the night. Yeah, that which is that's the same kind of space, isn't it? It's just letting tangents. And I'm sorry to hear that you know, people saw that as a waste of time, or saw that as a bad thing, that your brain would go and down these funny little cul-de-sacs and alleyways. And
yeah, but I mean, I think for me, a lot of it is that is why partly why it's a scary thing to genuinely play. You know, to genuinely have an undirected experiences like that. It's something that for me is well, it's a weird thing. So you know, play is technically pointless, right? That's the definition. Essentially, it has no specific objective. But clearly it's useful on some level. Otherwise, why would so many animals do it? So I think this idea of like play and playful, you know, this playfulness as being a waste of time is a very that for me, that's definitely a part of it.
It's what is being wasted. I mean, there's a measured elapse of time, but if you actually want to quantify it, like what comes out of it, I'm just thinking about, like, for example, this weekend, or rather, most of last week was being, you know, productive and trying to get stuff done, but ultimately feeling a bit miserable about something and not sure what, because wasn't getting on for whatever reason, you know, very aware of it. And then I spent half a day Sunday doing improv, 5-6 hours. and it was exactly the medicine that I needed. And it was the thing that we're describing. It was completely unstructured, it was unquantifiable, but the feeling I came out of it was more or less the feeling I'd probably needed throughout the rest of the week, that I'd wasted 20 odd hours on the other, not even 20 hours. Who am I kidding? I haven't got that much time anymore. 2 days in the week, 2.5 days, trying to search that feeling. So it's like, maybe it's because, yeah, there's uncertainty, there's unknowable things, but it's we can't account for what that time produced or created, and we can't measure it. Something about that.
Yeah, there's something for me around this idea of like working towards a goal, and that it breaks down in steps, and it's like the way that you say. So for me, if I'm say writing an article or something, it's like some people would say, well, you just do it, you write that many words a day and then it'll be fine. I do not work like that at all. That trying to work like that is almost impossible for me. I do most of the writing. Well, I kind of write a lot, then I write nothing. I write far too much, then I write nothing. Then I write, and then I kind of edit down and get an article out. But it's like this idea of like this linear progression towards a goal is so alien to the way that my brain seems to actually produce things of value. That for me is a lot of the wasting time. Is like, well, did I waste time writing too many words? Did I waste time writing not enough words? It's like, it's related to that kind of stepwise progress, when actually it's about like insight, and it's about, an insight isn't linear. It just kind of pops in your head, usually when you're doing something completely unrelated. And it's about making unexpected connections, and that's where a lot of the value seems to be. But this idea seems to keep us in this very linear kind of, almost like factory kind of production model of whatever it is that we do.
Yeah, bounded. Yeah, you're doing great at tying in these things that were the things we were going to talk about today. I'm glad goals have come up, because it's a real perennial problem. Like you're taught as a coach that's what, it's like, as a performance coach, you're taught, that it's all about the goal and then the working towards the goal. But there's something about me and my kind of people that just goals don't necessarily help, really, beyond the point. And there isn't much out there by the way of alternatives. You've got the Atomic Habits, Build Systems, that's about the best compelling thing I can find. But there's not a great deal of alternatives out there to goals, which is probably like more received wisdom, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I think for me, an awful lot of goals end up being like, well, they're all kind of, I can't pick a meaningful, it's like this idea of a meaningful goal. It's like, well, probably, maybe-ish. Like they don't work for me either, and I've been told, told to. Oh, so we appear to have briefly lost Chris there, which is a interesting one. So hopefully he'll rejoin us soon. He's back. Oh, that's good. There we go. Chris is back. Sorry. Okay. Where were we? What was I saying? Oh yeah, goals. Yeah, goals don't work for me either. I think this idea of for me, a lot of this relates directly to uncertainty, in the sense that goals presuppose that we know what a sensible approach is before we set out.
Yeah. I'm just this could be why goals don't work. I'm just thinking there's a connection being made here, Matthew. Bear with, there's some neurons joining. A big, like, for people, maybe it's just me, and it's not just me, people like me. Yeah, the goal presupposes what you just said, is that there's a how, there's a right how, there is a predefined how to get to it. And if your block is being fixated on finding that how, or you're using someone else's how that isn't your own, and you didn't come up with that how, and you're not invested in it, you're never going to get there. Right? I'm doing the thing where I talk through, where I try and understand what it is.
I think there's a how, and then there's an even whether it's something that you want, or certainly in that way. Even that, research suggests that we're pretty bad at predicting what we're going to like and what we don't like. That's why a lot of motivation research is so. It's like, the difference between what people actually, when you study it, enjoy versus what people think they're going to enjoy. It's a huge gap. It's partly why, people. Oh, Chris has disappeared again. So we'll just wait for him to rejoin again. That's an interesting one. So yeah, sorry for the interruption, everyone. So yeah, as I say, this is genuinely live and a bit of uncertainty being introduced here. So yeah, we'll see when he can rejoin. But yeah, so I think it's a really interesting one. If you do happen to be watching live, I'd be really grateful if you've got any comments or any questions right now, because we can share them out, and I can hopefully answer them for you. So yeah, this whole space of really directed working is a huge challenge for so many people that I particularly do want to explore what it is to work in undirected ways, and I think there's a huge value in it. And Chris is back. So yeah, the value in undirected working is really important. So yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly where we were. Chris, can you?
We were talking about people's likes and wants, and you were saying how there was a dissonance between that.
Oh yes, yeah, the research about predicting whether people are actually going to is that there's all sorts of behavior, but we kind of, on some level, we do actually know what we like. We're just very bad at then behaving in accordance to get that. We do other things. We think other things are going to make us happy than actually we tend to. And so for me, a lot of this wasting time thing is like, well, if we can plan it out, if we can know for sure, great. If we can't, pretending that we do is probably not a helpful use of time. And I think for me, this is where a lot of the play comes in. It's like, if you don't know what to do, there are things you can do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of improv is actually in that direction as well, isn't it? It's like, when you know what to do, you just do it. And when you don't know what to do, you have a set of tools and techniques so you can figure that out.
Yes, and that's the best planning. That's better planning than traditional. I like this idea of pretending. Yeah, the pretending part of it's this false certainty, like that we create around things, like the goal and the plans, isn't it? What are we trying to? What are we trying to do with that? Why are we trying to feel safer? What are we scared of? I don't know. There's something about pretending that really thrilled me when you said you used it in that context. Then.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's something around this idea of regret, actually. Of kind of not having known something, or not having done something. But there's also this idea for me around there's the other side of it, which is like, well, if only I'd known that ahead of time. And I think both of them cause all sorts of fear, and we want to avoid them. And it makes sense to try and avoid what we can avoid. But I think for me that complete not being able to engage with it, and also not being able to enjoy engaging with it. I think that's the other thing, is this idea of it being a chore. And I guess for some people it's never going to be a huge something that they love to do all the time. But if it is something that you're particularly given to engage with, you have skills in that direction, you have interest in that direction, it's not encouraged either, because it often leads to asking difficult questions and challenging assumptions and all of this kind of stuff. And that's not always welcome at school or at work.
That's true. Yeah, again, we're going back to the school report now, isn't it? Oh, shut up. Just keep your head down. Get on with the thing. Don't stop asking questions. Oh, I remember that actually, I was once told to shut up and stop asking questions because they made other people feel stupid. Work that one out.
Well, there's when I think the other people in that sentence is fairly clear as to whom that person is referring, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not other
yeah.
people. It's the person who was saying it.
Possibly, yeah, yeah, it could very well be that, couldn't it? Yeah, that's interesting. But I realise that you just kindled that thrill that you'll know, or people watching will know, who've done any kind of responding in the moment and being present. And improv, I guess, is the frame of reference here. That feeling you get when in the moment you do cope and adapt with something, the fear, the thing that we were feeling, the uncertainty, it manifests, it hits us straight on, and our reaction to it is never what we expect it will be. I mean, yeah, sure, people sometimes freeze, but something happens, and you just feel, I don't know what it's described like. It's like watching yourself, isn't it? And you observe yourself. You're like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? You surprise yourself, and that in itself is quite a scary feeling.
Yeah, I think the idea that we ourselves are unpredictable to ourselves is, first of all, it's not in a lot. It's a fairly. It is actually there if you look at quite a lot of psychology research, but it's not a deep assumption. It's one of those things that's proven but not fed through into a lot of the other models.
Okay.
It's this idea that we can kind of completely know ourselves and predict our behavior.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense actually from a from an experiential point of view or a complexity point of view. It's like we're hugely, we can't reckon out everything. So we do have to kind of edge into it and feel into it. And I think for me, a lot of this is, the other part of this is people feel completely that they don't have any tools for dealing with this. And this relates to the intuition, because for me, our primary tool for engaging with this stuff is intuitive. This is what the intuition is for. This is why we have it. It's for engaging with complex stuff that we can't fully reckon out. Okay. That's why it's used for social situations, why it's used for kind of environments that we don't fully understand, why it comes to the fore in those kind of environments. That's why it's there. It's telling us, here's some information. But it takes some skill to work with what it gives us, and it takes some skill to actually refine it as a skill, as a thing in and of itself as well. But I think that how we work with what emerges and how we feel, what the feelings that are arising from them, but they're telling us something useful. But we make this direct assumption between like, okay, I feel this way, so I must do this. And again, I think there's a wasting time thing. It's like, it's urgent. Oh God, it's urgent. I must do something. I don't know what to do, so I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
And instead of just being with it and waiting for it to kind of tell you, or at least give you some direction, it's not going to tell you specifically what to do, but it's going to give you a steer in the right direction.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much in that there, Mark. Yeah, first of all, I just like that idea. Yeah, the uncertainty is something that is out there. Receive wisdom, but yeah, it's as much applies on the inside as it does out there. Yeah, that's a great point. But intuition. Yeah, the feeling. Yeah, when we get the feeling, how we react to it, an urgent feeling, I have to act on it now because this is so urgent. I have to do this now. But yeah, sitting with it first and seeing where that goes. Yeah, there is an art to it, isn't there? There is but that's again, it's not something you're taught to do, and again, there is no right way to do that either.
And as if on cue, Chris has disappeared again, so I'm left to improvise and see what happens. So hopefully he'll rejoin us soon. In the meantime, that idea of improvisation and developing improvisational capacity is such a huge thing for so many people. And, the thought of perhaps even being in the situation that I'm in right now with no script and some kind of demand on me to say something is probably a thing that might make you quite uncomfortable. Perhaps for me, perhaps is making you uncomfortable right now. And the thought of being in this position is a really difficult one. But as we said, there are tools and techniques you can use to really develop it and to practice. And there are also, it is a practice. This is something that, having done this a few times, stops being quite so scary. I'm not saying it's not kind of uncomfortable, and I'm not saying that Chris is back, and on cue he is back, but it isn't overwhelming. So what I was saying to the audience whilst you weren't here is that in situations like that, it's kind of a practice thing. That there's a practiced being with it, where because being in a situation where you kind of feel like everyone's looking at me now, oh God, it's like I've got to do something, and actually there is a way of handling that, ways of working with that, and a lot of it is to put yourself in, to find yourself in those situations and see what, it's because it's so felt, it's like, how am I working with this? It's a very experiential thing. Oh, brilliant. And we can't even hear Chris now. So this is great. So I'll let him fiddle with the settings some more. And nope, still no progress. So yes. We did have some technical issues setting up as well, which is an interesting one. We do try and get all of these out of the way at the beginning of the show, or before we actually meet. So unfortunately, they seem to have. What we've done is we've found some new technical issues. So what part of the excitement of exploring uncertainty is you don't entirely know exactly what's going to, what new problems you'll have to solve in the environment. So yeah. If Chris can, so Chris disappeared. So what we're going to do is I'm going to wait and see if he rejoins. So he has rejoined now. I'm just going to join him back up. So Chris, do you want to try speaking again? Clearly Chris can't hear me, though I think we can hear him now, which is interesting. No, he can't hear me. Great. Okay, so I think what we're going to do, given the significant technical issues, is one of the ways to work with this uncertainty thing is really to know when to end and to leave. There's no need to stay on stage after you finish saying what you're saying. So the technology is not supporting us to do this. However, I think we will hopefully be able to revisit this in some way in the future. I think for me, it really is worth kind of exploring your own relationship with what is valuable to you indirectly, what's going to give you more opportunity to explore and to do things and build capability and play, and to hopefully not be too afraid of that, build some capacity in that. And if it is a source of fear, then edge into it. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to be brilliant at it straight away. It's not one of those things that really you can be. And the people that do seem to be able to cope with it usually just have had a lot of practice. I think this is partly why people with ADHD traits are often quite good in this space, is because I've had a huge amount of practice at making it up as I go along, because my capacity of organization leads me to be in that situation pretty often. So for me, that's a thing. So just it is a practice thing over and over again, and allowing yourself to, if you do enjoy uncertainty, giving yourself a bit of that, enjoy exploring it, play with it. It's not a thing just because other people are afraid of it that you have to necessarily be afraid of as well. So if you do want to get in touch with Chris and really kind of continue this conversation, and I very much recommend you do, you can find a link to his website on the in the show notes. That's chriskenworthy.co.uk, and you can also find a link to his podcast and to his new newsletter. So I think that's he's doing a lot of stuff with the newsletter at the moment, so I really do suggest you check that one out for more information and tips and all sorts of stuff on this. So I want to say thank you very much, Chris, for appearing on the show. I'm very sorry we've had so many technical issues, but that's what being live absolutely is. That's That's how it works sometimes. I really do hope that the show has got you in the audience thinking. If it has, yeah, reach out and ask, get in touch with either of us, hopefully by a more reliable medium than the stream has been today. But thank you for watching. It really is your support and your viewership and participation that makes this show worthwhile and really gives me an excuse to talk to interesting people doing interesting things. So yeah, please do share it with anyone you think would find it useful. You can find upcoming and past episodes on YouTube and LinkedIn. And the podcast is available if you search for Delightful Dissent on your favourite podcast platform, though those are really rather out of date at the moment. And I am still working on a way of getting them out there in a way that works. So yeah, even more technical issues, but hopefully those will be resolved soon. The next episode, I'm going to be talking to Marianne Powell, who's poet, songwriter, and coach. And we're going to be talking about the idea that it's irresponsible to enjoy yourself. I think that's it really does relate quite close. I don't know how much anyone believes me, but I really don't plan these in terms of their connection. But I think it's really interesting how they do often connect. There's a part of me that really believes I shouldn't be enjoying myself, that I'll get in trouble, that that essentially that there's going to be a price to pay if I enjoy myself. That I shouldn't be having too much fun. And it really relates to wasting time and play and all of that stuff. So yeah, I really hope you can join me for that. And that's going to be we're doing fortnightly stuff. Oh yeah, Chris has said in the chat, yeah, that you should be a grown-up. So yeah, that message, oh god, yeah, that message is definitely a big thing. The show is now being recorded fortnightly, so the next live recording is going to be at 5 p.m. UK time, and that's going to be on Tuesday the 12th of April UK time. I really hope to see you then, but in the meantime, please do go out there and make some delightful dissent of your own. Thanks very much, and goodbye.